Hello everyone, how are you doing? Thanks very much for joining me on Coastal Catch-Ups. This week is slightly different, so I'm not interviewing a person, I am interviewing myself. So it's partly because I didn't have anyone this week, so I thought I'd do something instead to fill the gap, and the idea I came up with is I'll interview myself. So basically what I've done is the past five episodes I have asked myself questions about the conversations I've had with people. So I thought, yeah, I'll record it, share it. So it means I'll go into a bit more detail on some of the stuff I've chatted about. Maybe some other different views, stuff like that. So I hope you find it interesting, and it'll give a good summary of the last five episodes.
It's all about Marie and the coastal sea, aquatic life and everything in between. So sit on down and take a seat. Coastal catch-ups with Sam P.
I'll start off just by telling you a bit about myself. So my name is Sam, as you know, but I've been working as a marine scientist now for coming up to 2 years. Before that, I was a general environmental scientist, so it wasn't necessarily marine work. I basically worked for a consultant, so we did environmental impact assessments. So if there's any development, we would look at the impact it would have on particular environmental receptors. But now, like I say, I'm working more in the marine sphere of things, mainly looking at the physical processes of a marine environment. So looking at tides, waves, sediment transport as well. So like the likes of erosion or build up of sediment. So more down the lines of the physical processes rather than ecology. Now, I do have a bit of ecology experience, so I'm a certified marine mammal observer. So basically, particular developments will require mitigation to be put in place. So say they're drilling a hole in the middle of the sea and it makes vibrations. They require someone to make sure there's no whales or whatever around the working area, because underwater noise and vibration can cause serious harm to marine mammals, because they use that for locating prey, migrating as well. I am also a sailor in my spare time. Me and my brother, I'm lucky to sail with my brother in a 2-man racing dinghy. We do that around the coast of Northern Ireland. We've also travelled a wee bit doing that as well. So we're over in Cornwall there for a big event. So it's a great way to see the world as well. And it's great fun. So I've been doing that more or less my entire life, since I think I started sailing when I was probably, I want to say 8. So I've been a user of our coast my entire life. Why did I start the podcast? I wanted to do something a bit more creative. So in my job, it's very following guidance and protocols and doing things, and I just needed to do something that kind of educated me but also educated other people. So I thought by talking to other experts in the area, I thought I could gather up information, digest it, send it out to you guys listening now. A very broad topic about the marine environment, coastal environment, and yeah, just discussing all the topics there is, and there's so much. I think I realised that when I started asking people and searching for people. It's for example, the offshore wind industry at the minute kicking off. You have conservation, you have the people that rely on our coastline and seas to actually live, make a living, if they're fishing, whatever else. So yeah, there's certainly a lot going on, and I think it's good in the sense that I'm not going to be stuck for people to interview. So hopefully, I can get loads more interesting people on. And by saying that as well, if you are interested in coming on, if you are listening and you think you've a good story to share or whatever, please message me. Like it's please do. It'd be great to hear from you, and I'd love to chat to you. Enjoy speaking to people as well, and hearing their stories. So I'm kind of killing between educating myself, educating others, and actually enjoying the actual process of talking to someone and listening and learning. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. So long may I continue. I was always quite quiet, so if you probably know me outside this, I'm quite a quiet person. Yeah, this is probably not, if you don't know me that well, you're probably quite surprised in seeing me doing this, but I think when it comes to topics I'm interested in, I suppose I'm quite, not vocal, but I definitely have more opinions and willing to chat about them. So if you ask me about football, I probably would give you one sentence, whereas if you ask me something about the challenges of implementing sustainability around our coastline, I'd talk to you for a good hour, probably more. So yeah, I think it just depends on what I'm talking about, and is that called selective hearing? Is that selective hearing? So yeah, maybe I'm guilty of that. So if someone asks me something I'm not interested in, I'll ignore it. Yeah. So yeah, by doing this, I kind of feel a bit more energetic and energized doing it. So I love doing it. So it's all good. And then the general theme of the podcast is, I suppose, sustainability of our coasts and oceans. If you don't, sustainability is a term thrown about quite a lot. Probably could be used incorrectly at times. It's more to do with, well, in my view and what I've read and understood, so you've 3 pillars of sustainability. You've the environmental side, you've the economic side, and you've the social/community side. The good thing about the last 5 episodes is I've been able to kind of touch on a bit of everything. So the environmental side, for example, conservation stuff with Dr. Rachel Miller, community stuff. I got to talk about volunteering and blue prescriptions with Paul Stewart at Castle Espy. So getting people outside involved, good for their mental health. And then the economic side, for example, with Thomas Davies with the offshore wind stuff. So it's quite nice to see those 3 pillars being drawn into all my chats. So yeah, hopefully I can continue to do that. So like I say, I'm going to start by asking myself a couple of questions about the guests I've had on. The first one, guest I had, episode 1, Rory Martin, the guinea pig. Rory owns Strangford Lock Activity Centre, and he's been running that for a couple of years now. How do I know Rory? I know Rory's brother quite well, and I was actually sailing with his 2 brothers last night, so I was always aware Rory was doing what he was doing, and his company is based near where my mum and dad live, so I was always I could always see the activities and stuff he was doing, so I thought he would be a good guy to nab to do the first podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, you can go check it out. What do I think of Rory? No, I'll not slate you. Rory's a really good lad. The more I've got to know him the past couple of years, the more I understand his passion for driving environmentally aware practices in all the stuff he does. Primarily through, I suppose, educating the people that come on to his activity courses when they're paddleboarding, kayaking, teaching them how to view wildlife safely, doing paddling with a purpose, so going out to islands and doing litter picks. So the more I've heard about this, the more I've respected him, and I've really admired his company and how he's pushing it forward. So I hope I can see that, and I'm sure I will continue into the future. I asked, what are the benefits and challenges to tourism? So in our chat we talk about these honeypot locations being really overwhelmed because they don't actually have the infrastructure to cope with the increasing amount of people visiting these sites. I think from Rory's perspective anyway, if people are coming down and maybe they've got their confidence up with getting out in the water, kayaking, whatever it is, I think from his perspective, and he's definitely doing it, is educating them. So educating them how to, how close should they get to a seal haul out site, you know, seals breeding with pups, like he mentioned the rule of thumb, so putting your thumb up, making sure the animals within your thumb print, you know, wee techniques like that, and I think that's vital. So it means when they come down next time to enjoy the water, they know what to do, they're aware of these issues, and then they'll spread the message. So I think it's kind of like generating just that education and awareness. And I know the council and stuff have put out signs to make people aware of the animals, but I suppose there's a long way to go. People they're just not used to probably being in an environmentally sensitive area, so therefore should you expect them to know what to do? I suppose not, but it's just trying to get in there before they do anything stupid and educate them. So if you're listening to this podcast and you if you're thinking about going like kayaking tonight, just take care of what you're doing, you know, be sensitive to wildlife in the area, and clean up after yourselves and leave no trace. That's particularly important. As you saw Rory last night, that's what I was meant to say. He was out with a group of 20 people. We were out sailing last night. I was actually sailing with his two brothers last night, so I saw him, Rory, out with a group of 20 people, which was great to see, and they were all enjoying themselves. And yeah, so Rory, if you're listening, good luck with the rest of the summer season, and yeah, I'm sure I'll see you about. So my next chat was with Thomas Davies. How did I meet Thomas? It was via LinkedIn. I dropped him a message. He was an active poster on LinkedIn about the offshore wind and seemed quite passionate about it, so I thought Thomas would be a good guy to get on. And I enjoyed our chat in particularly. So what did I think of Thomas's career path? So if you haven't listened to that, Thomas went from working for Shell in the Americas, now he's settled in South Wales working for he's working for a company developing wind farms in the Celtic Sea. So it was a nice and pretty awesome transition into the new renewable energy industry, which I thought was cool. He also said at the end of our conversation, because obviously the big oil companies and stuff are still going strong, he acknowledged that those big companies are going to be key players probably in the future because they have so much resources and money and skills. So no doubt they will play a part in the renewable energy industry once it comes about. So I thought that was an interesting point, and it was realistic. I think it's important to know, although there has been problems about the Rosebank oil field up in, I can't remember where Rosebank is, up Scotland direction, must be. There's new applications going in to activate these new oil fields and gas and extract fossil fuels. I think it's important to note that, albeit I don't agree with new oil and gas fields being activated, but certainly oil and gas are still a key player in our energy industry. So I think if you go on National Grid, have a really cool live viewer, and you can see what percentage of the energy generated in the UK is coming from. Fossil fuels is still up there, so I think although it's important to cut that fossil fuel percentage down and get the renewables one up, I think that's exactly what we have to do. It can't be turn the taps off and then where's all the energy going to come from? So I think the transition should be quick, but it can't happen all at once. How important is community involvement in the energy industry? I think it's massive. I was reading about schemes that so when you put an offshore wind farm offshore, it's not just the wind turbines. You have to get the energy offshore on the land into the grid, so it can go to our houses and power them. So there's a lot more to it. So the cable landfalls, and then there's normally probably like a substation it goes to for it to be converted and directed elsewhere. So communities, coastal communities at these sites will more than likely be impacted. And I was reading a good case study. These energy developers can provide support to communities that maybe like rural fishing communities, but obviously there's opportunities for investment and capital investment into the infrastructure in these places. So whether it be community centres, things like that. So I think there's an opportunity for communities to be involved there. But also you have the workforce of all these sites. So all these wind farms, by 2030, the ambition of the UK government is to build 50 gigawatts of energy by 2030, which is ridiculous if you consider, I think the total demand of the UK, I looked at this last week, and it was around 50. So you're basically replacing the entire capacity of the UK grid in less than 10 years. So I certainly think that's ambitious. But here, I suppose it's good to be ambitious. But anyway, all these wind farms are going to have to be built, and you're going to need the people to go out to sea to build these things. So I think, for example, there's plenty of opportunity for a new workforce to be skilled up, and these coastal communities can be part of that, definitely. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Thomas also mentioned about floating offshore wind. So I actually wrote an article about this after our chat. As part of this target of 50 gigawatts by 2030, 5 gigawatts will be required to be floating offshore wind, and that is basically these wind turbines are not fixed on the seabed, they're floating and they're anchored into place. So these have the benefit of, if you think of really deep water, so basically around our coastline, the further you go offshore, the windier it gets, because you don't have friction from the land. You have basically just it's more exposed. But the further you go offshore, the deeper the water is, so you have problems actually getting, if you're to fix the turbine into the seabed, it's a lot deeper, so it's difficult. Whereas these floating wind farms have the advantage, they can be towed out, and then these cables can go right down to the seabed, keep them fixed in place. That means they're offshore, getting more wind, creating more energy and more green energy. So that's the benefit of that. So the Celtic Sea is earmarked for a lot of that development, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But it's pretty exciting. And they also have the advantage of they can be constructed and I'm pretty sure towed out, so there's less faffing about when they're actually offshore. So we'll see what happens. So my next chat was with Dr. Rachel Miller. So how do I know Dr. Rachel Miller? I actually worked with Rachel in the company I'm with now. So Rachel worked there for a while. So that's how I know Rachel. And then she went off to Ulster Wildlife to do her thing. So she is a marine biologist by trade. From speaking to her on my podcast, I think she seems to be loving life. So that's really great to see. Will I now eat oysters in a restaurant? I actually, not long after our chat, I was out for dinner, and I'll not mention the restaurant's name, but on the menu, native oysters were on the starter menu, and I was like, no way they're native oysters, can't be. Rachel's just told me how endangered they are and they're being protected, couldn't be. So of course I ordered one just out of curiosity to find out, but in actual fact they're Pacific oysters. So There you are. If you don't know the difference between your oysters, the Pacific oysters are like the teardrop shape, whereas the native are more flat. Thanks, Rachel. I now know the difference between my oysters. How important is community engagement / citizen science in conservation? So we talked about Ulster Wildlife rely heavily on volunteers, so it's really important to engage with the community and get volunteers out to help with projects. I think it has the benefits of people like volunteering. Maybe they want to learn more about a particular type of wildlife, if it is oysters, or maybe it's seagrass habitat. And like Rachel said in our chat, like a lot of these people already are involved in the sea, between diving, maybe they own a boat, so there's ways for them to kind of tie in what maybe skills they have already and what they can help with in the conservation program. So I think it's really important. And then the other thing I've written here is the citizen science. So for conservation to be monitored and actually know things are working, you need data, I suppose, and you need to know if populations of species, coverage, mortality rates. So if people can be trained up to know or do basic surveying, so in a certain area, and they can record it on an app or whatever, it would make a massive difference to actually understanding a lot of these species and conservation programs in general. So I think it's massively important, and yeah, I'm excited to see what other programs Ulster Wildlife do and what Rachel comes up with. So I'm looking forward to that. So episode 4 was with John Gilmore. It was great to hear about John's life, I suppose, and his journey in this sailing and his observations across the Atlantic. So what do you think of John's decision to jump into his first transatlantic? So John was working in London and he packed in his job and decided to get a boat with his friend and head across the Atlantic. I think part of me goes, it's mad, but like he also said in his chat, if you're going to do something like that, I suppose there's never going to be a right time, and you just got to do it. So yeah, I respect it. I think he's actually given me an itch. I kind of want to do something like that now. If my girlfriend and my mum are listening, no, yeah, they'll hate me for that, but yeah, I think there's something really, brave and courageous about doing that. John's experience, he chatted about his first stint across the Atlantic, and then he also chatted about this most recent one with his family and his observations around the Caribbean once he got there. So it was very interesting to hear about the differences he noticed around different islands, and how maybe islands have got more affluent and more developed, I suppose, whereas probably other ones maybe haven't. I asked, could I have coped in John's encounter with the US Navy? I could imagine the shock of initially realising that you're in the middle of the water and this rib comes up to you and you're in an area maybe where there's pirates, that would be frightening, no doubt about it. I like to think I'd remain calm once I figured out who it was, but I suppose you never know until you're in that situation, and hopefully I never will. But fair play to John for keeping calm, and although he did get frustrated and angry at the end and afterwards, but no, it's not an easy thing to do, and I hope I think the rest of the trip made up for it. They had a great time with the family together, so we could put that sort of event behind them and move on. But also, John also talked about when he was heading across the Atlantic, the difference in the sargassum weed. So the sargassum weed is there's a sphere of the east coast of America. I think we're tide. It must be the tide and the currents. This weed accumulates. And the first time I went across, it didn't really. I think there was a couple of patches here and there, but after his most recent one, there was loads. So this is obviously due to enrichment of nutrients in the water through agricultural runoff, maybe particular types of pollution, generating this growth of weed, and then also the increase in heat as well probably plays a factor in the ocean as well. So the impact of when this stuff washes up the land, it can actually smother everything in its path. So, and it stinks as well. So for tourist sites, it's not too good, and then for wildlife as well along the coast. So I've never seen this stuff. Hopefully will one day, but yeah, it's an interesting observation. And then I suppose back home here in Northern Ireland, we have this blue algae problem at the minute, which seems to be on the news quite a bit. So increasing temperatures, increasing nutrients in the water, causing this stuff to grow. And then I believe it's the actual bacteria that's what causes threats to dogs and I suppose humans as well. But they actually can't tell by just looking at it. You can't tell whether it's toxic or not. It's just when it has to be tested before you know. So the safe option is just to avoid it if you come across it. But it's nasty looking stuff, really is. So where was I? So got some weed with John, yeah. So yeah, really, and we chatted as well about these issues when they're, I suppose, out to sea and offshore. You're not really aware of them because you don't hear about them. It's easy to almost forget. Like if this problem was happening right on our doorstep, like the blue algae, you'd hear about it all the time. But just this stuff is offshore, so you don't really hear about it. So it's good that John can share this and share it with us, and good in the sense that it raises awareness, not good that it's happening. And then also you have on the other side, you have the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I saw an article, there was a guy actually swimming across the Pacific, which is mad as well. But he actually had to stop. I think there's problems with their boat. Yeah, he's raising awareness of the problem of climate change. So there are people out there raising awareness. I think it's just good to find them and promote them, and yeah. I don't know. Part of me always goes, is raising awareness enough? Like, should there be some sort of action coming from the awareness? But it's good probably just to do your own wee bit and become educated, and if there's anything close to your heart, become a activist if you want, push for policies, laws, anything that's close to you. So although the world is changing, no doubt about it, I think hopefully nature can adapt and humans can adapt and learn a lot of lessons on the way. So I think that's what it comes down to. So my last chat was with Paul Stewart, who manages Castle Espy. How did I meet Paul? Again, it was over LinkedIn. I just gave him a message and he was more than happy to come on. So thanks, Paul, for coming on. Yeah, it was really great to chat with him. The question I have here is, what role do you think Castle Espy will play in nature conservation? I think it'll play a massive role, because from speaking to Paul, the amount of young children going in that place to learn from maybe with their parents, school trips, there's a massive opportunity there to teach this future generation the basics of nature and getting comfortable being around nature, and doing activities outside and inspiring them, really. So I think that's a massive. It almost goes, it's a shame there's only one site in Northern Ireland. There's plenty of other places that probably could, you think of like the likes of up at Loch Foyle, you know, Carlingford Loch, down in Newcastle. They don't have to be big sites. They just have to be somewhere that facilitates activities. So I think there's definitely, I think more could be done there, definitely. But for the meantime, Castle Espy is a great site for it as well, being on the shores of Strangford Loch. So Strangford Loch is all the main designations because of its habitats and species. So we mentioned about the Brent geese coming in there. Actually saw some the other day, and I think that's early. If there's any bird experts listening, I know maybe some Brent stay the entire summer if they don't travel and migrate, but I flew over my mum and dad's house, and I thought it was a wee bit early, like, because they normally come over the winter. So and the weather's been quite good, quite warm. So anyway, if you know anything about that, let me know. So anyway, yeah, I think it has a massive role for conservation in terms of education, and even for adults as well. I know I'm talking about future generations, but adults can definitely learn stuff from a site like that. So yeah, we also talked about, Paul mentioned about ecosystem services, not being a big fan of that term. I was thinking about this, and then I was thinking about other ways to say it. So in my mind, everything's linked. So our human world and nature's linked, and Paul said it sounds like it's transactional, but I think it is transactional. I think there's benefits. I think there's more benefits from nature going towards humans than the other way, definitely 100%, but I think it is transactional anyway. And I think nature provides so many things for us, like clean water, protection against flooding. If we're talking about wetlands have so many benefits. So you have carbon storage, so lots of the grasses in the wetlands, if they die and decompose, they can be covered with sediment from the tide coming in and out, so that all the carbon gets buried. They can act as buffers from storms. They can purify water by taking toxins out. So there's so many, and then providing a home for biodiversity as well. So loads of benefits to it. Where was I going with this? Ecosystem services, are they transactional? Yeah, I think they are. I think it is transactional, and I think we have a duty as humans as well to give back to nature whatever we can. What I think it's as well helping nature adapt as well. I think there's a massive role there for us to do. So yeah, I think there's a transaction there, definitely. Do you think blue prescriptions could work? So if you haven't heard of blue prescriptions, it's basically for anyone suffering from poor mental health. They are given volunteering roles or activities to do outside, probably, obviously I'm not a doctor, but probably in a group, I imagine in a group setting with other people and making connections with humans and nature. So I think there's a massive opportunity there, and I think anyone, if you chat to anyone who's involved in volunteering outside and in groups like, conservation groups like that, I think the sense of community and the enjoyment they get from whatever they're doing, I'd say it's significant, and I think it's definitely an important part of linking humans back to nature. I'm conscious that we live in concrete cities now, and we actually don't have a lot of us don't access greenery and blue scenes that much, and I think it's a key role, because at the end of the day, that's where we came from. We came from living outside, and if you go back in a real historic way, I think that's where, like, ultimately where a real connection lies. And I think all this social media, connecting with people over screens and stuff, I think there's definitely something not right about it. I think it's good, and it's ironic I'm saying this because I'm talking to people over Zoom, but I think your main connections have to be face to face. I think it has to be. and then being outside connecting with nature. If you're going back to that transaction thing I'm talking about, so if you're giving back, you know, you're doing a bit of good, you're maybe restoring a bit of land and you're seeing wildlife moving in, that does good for nature and it does good for you. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's lots of opportunities there for the likes of blue prescriptions. And Paul also mentioned about the volunteering opportunities at Castle Espy, so yeah, check it out if you want to get involved. So that is the end of my coastal reflection. I hope I haven't bored you to death, and hope you found it interesting. I just want to say thanks for listening, and I want to say thank you to the 5 folks that have been on the podcast so far. So Rory Martin, Thomas Davies, Rachel Miller, John Gilmore and Paul Stewart. So I just want to say a massive thank you, and yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys agreeing to give up a part of your day. So it's really good to have you on. Just before I finish, if you want to stay updated on these episodes, you can subscribe to our email newsletter, so I'll keep you updated with any news, such as new episodes or articles. So if you want to be kept up to date, please check out the website. I'll pop a link in the bio so you can access it. So yeah, and then also the other thing is, I think as part of this, I came up with some of these questions, but I would like probably to get you guys involved a bit more. So if you have a question for someone, doesn't even have to be related to one of the podcasts. If you just have a question or something about a particular topic we've talked about, please let me know, so you can message me on socials, whatever platform, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or you can email me at sam@coastalcatchups.com, and that'd be great, because it would be nice to hear what you guys are thinking, and there's probably stuff I've missed that you guys have picked up on, so it'd be really good to hear from your perspective as well. So that'll do me. I'm going to get my dinner now, and I will see you on episode 6.
It's all about Marie and the coastal sea, aquatic life and everything in between. So sit on down and take a seat. Coastal catch-ups with the stampede.